Hey, so I have a very, very, very lovely person here to talk to you today, to talk with me. And this is Nitzan Sitzer, who's a very, very dear friend of mine from many years ago, around 20 years, I think I've known Nitzan. And Nitzan is one of the most inspiring people that I know. Right from the beginning of my first knowing of Nitzan, he completely changed my life in the most wonderful ways. And I really wanted to bring Nitzan as one of the people that's being interviewed by Hannah and I, because I think you're going to love him and love all that he has to share. So without further ado, please allow me to introduce the amazing,
Nitzan!
wonderful, the talented, the playful, the humorous, the amazing Nitzan. And
Hello.
Nitzan, I would love you to tell everybody who you are and what you do and what you bring to this world, because I think you say it better than anybody else could.
Who I am. I'm coming to realize that the less I say, see the trumpets are still blaring. Yes, the less I say, the more I shine. But yes, words are important. So I have these parallel aspects of myself. One aspect is Nitzan the performer. Ever since I was a wee child, my mother actually says that when I was in her belly, she was constantly laughing. Apparently I was tickling at her heart. And I just came shuffling out, and I've been performing professionally since I was 10. And so that would make it some 42 years of professional performance, be it as an actor, storyteller, a dancer, singer in musicals and with symphonies, and in movies and television and voiceover. I've dubbed now tens of animated series. And so there's this theatrical element to me, which I love and appreciate. And ever since I can remember, as a child at night, I would always pray to God. And there was this kind of sense of something bigger and sense of love and wanting to be an angel. I specifically remember there was this TV show about angels. Michael Landon was an angel, and every episode he would go about and meet someone and change their lives. So that was my inspiration. And lo and behold, when I was 20, I met, and this is in the 80s, so this is before the whole New Age movement. I met a healer and a channel. So there was no language to that. A channel of what? The only channel I knew was channels on television. So I met Sarah Paz here in Israel. At the time I was living in Israel. She was this quaint, I believe she was in her 70s, South African woman who lived in this small house. And the moment she opened the door, my girlfriend persuaded me to go and visit her. I was actually a bit reluctant, to say the truth, because I had no idea what it was about. But the moment she opened the door, that was it. I was smitten. She started talking to me about energy and healing and being connected to the universe. And I had no idea what she was talking about, but this sense of excitement started welling up in my heart. And then she gave me a healing session. Now, again, I had never, this is what is it? What do you mean healing? Yes, I'll transfer energy to you. And it's like, okay, I'm willing to give it a try. So just that sense of warmth in my body just suddenly started to shake, and that was it. That was absolutely it. I was smitten that night. My girlfriend was lying down next to me, so I sat up and put my hands on. Literally, it was like trying to force out energy and say, "Can you feel it? Can you feel it?" It's like, I don't feel anything. But and I said in that moment, when I grow up, I want to be a healer. This is what I want to be. So that literally changed the course of my life, because my life was very much just focused on, being as successful a performer as I could. And in fact, I was quite successful at the time, and already had some contracts in hand, but just something shifted so deeply. And I also became really aware of how unhappy I was. This, you turn on the light and you have to see what's there. And I immediately realized, oh, I am so unhappy. I am so insecure. I am so afraid, I'm jealous, all these negative elements, which I'd kind of suppressed. But suddenly within this context, and I began going to a therapist at the time, and she began talking to me about unconditional love. So, you know, everything just shifted, and that jettisoned me off onto my spiritual quest. And that eventually took me to Findhorn, which is where I met you, Sweet Feet. And my goodness, there are so many stories there. I was really blessed with a lot of mystical, very profound mystical experiences that I could not deny. And it was just so profound. I mean, early on, I woke up one night and there was a rose made of light. And I was like, am I ready for this? Oh, I don't think so. And I went back to sleep. Or being with Sarah Paz in these channeling circles. I was this young guy and I'd never meditated, but apparently she was channeling she was connected to the White Eagle Lodge, which was actually connected to England, kind of old school metaphysics and spirituality. And so she was channeling or facilitating the circle that they had been communing for like 15 years. This is back in the 80s, so starting in early 70s. And almost immediately after I just met her, apparently she channeled that I needed to be a part of the circle. So like, huh, really? And so there I was, suddenly immersed in this wonderful metaphysical experience. And then the Saddam Hussein war started between Israel and Iraq, where Iraq was sending Scud missiles over upon us. And they guided us to when we went into our closed rooms that we had to seal up because we thought there would be chemical weapons. We were guided to meditate and imagine this golden net above Israel, and lo and behold, over 200 of these massive scuds were sent and fell in populated areas, and not one person was killed, which is a miracle.
Yeah, literally.
So
yes,
so that you know, just all these amazing experiences, and wow, I could go on and on and on. So but that's it. And so over the course of the last 30 years, I immersed myself in in-depth meditative practices, be it the Awakening to Your Light Body course taught by Sanaya Roman, which is phenomenal. I became a Reiki master, a yoga and qigong instructor. I did so many workshops, lived in Findhorn, did shamanic journeys, lived with Native Americans. I mean, anything I could step into. I was so hungry for it. It was as if I'd been in the desert for so long, and suddenly there was this oasis. So I was traveling from oasis to oasis, just drinking in as much as I could get. And that took me to the States and took me all over the world. And it was 14 years ago that, again, through this mystical experience, and again, I saw the rose, I was guided to come back to Israel, and which kicked my beep and enabled me to finally ground, because I had been journeying into the ethers. And in fact, at one point I was in California and I wanted to go to this psychic healing school. And I went to an introduction, and the principal, I guess she was speaking to, maybe there were 30 or 40 of us. And afterwards she came up to me and said, "Could I speak to you in my office?" I was like, sure, yes. Appreciating the extra attention. So I went in there and she said, "Okay, listen, you know, she's speaking, this is what I do. And I could see your aura, and you're just this bright, bright, bright being. And you're like this flower with huge colorful petals. But it was clear that you have absolutely no roots. So all that light won't help you if you're not grounded. So go and ground. I am not accepting you into this school."
Yes.
So lo and behold, I made my way back to Israel, and Israel kicked my butt. And it's been a very intense. But as of the last year, it's like, something shifted and settled. And here I am.
You found your roots. You did.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Beautiful. And you know, wow, what a life. And from what I've known of your last 20 years, I know the depth and the absolute passion and commitment that you have to your journey and
Commitment.
to your opening and your flowering, and also to helping other people in with theirs.
Absolutely.
And I know that that's
Absolutely.
a really big piece for you, is the sharing of
Yes.
your wisdom and all that you've come to know. And I'd love if you could share a little bit about, you know, all the different ways that you know, because I know you do a lot with health and nutrition, and you do sort of qigong, and you do yeah, there we go, this is the mega smoothie.
L'chaim. Oh,
And you know, you've got your acting school, and you've got all these different things. I'd love if you could speak a little to each of those, maybe in some way, and tell us about
sure.
your smoothie for starters. I'm intrigued.
Okay. So first of all, I have been drinking smoothies now literally for the past 30 years. When I had that big epiphany and eventually left Israel, I moved to New York, and there I was, this actor, professional actor, but literally just kind of just felt as if, no, I'm no longer an actor. I'm in the spiritual zone, and I almost immediately found a guru, Sri Chinmoy. And rather than go to Broadway shows, which you'd expect an actor to go to, I would go to, there's only like 3 or 4 health food stores. And for whatever reason, I was just so interested. I would literally walk up and down the supplement aisle and just read the supplements, and was always especially felt connected to algae for whatever reason. And Celtec, blue-green algae, was just coming out at the time. And I almost immediately got a job at a health food restaurant, which there were only like 3 or 4 in the city at the time. This was in 1990. And so almost immediately food and just wellness choices, healthy habits became my passion. And I started learning everything I could about that. So, I mean, for me, it's all about healthy habits. So I start my day off with at least an hour of meditating, then a cold shower, then I go off to the beach, which I am blessed to live 5 minutes bike ride from the beach, and I walk, and I do my qigong. And so it's an immersive lifestyle. It is, you know, every so often I will take on more and more elements. As of late, I've been completely inspired by Wim Hof and his breathing technique and cold showers, which I had been doing for a few years, but then suddenly he put it into such a clear perspective. So the whole wellness element has always been something. And even though I never went to school, and there was reasons for that, which I won't get into now, I always immersed myself in the study of it, and I would just go hang out at the health food store. So I'd be learning about things, and no matter where I was working or what I was doing, I always had my green smoothie with me. So that almost immediately would set off, what are you drinking? Why are you drinking mud? You know, what is that? That's disgusting. It's like, well, let me tell you. And so the saying, you are what you eat, became really very much part of my life. And in fact, there was, I think this was in the later 90s, a book came out, Diet for New America, by John Robbins. And he created a non-for-profit organization to educate with that. And somehow I got connected to them, and I've always performed a lot for kids. I had this kind of childlike. And so at the time I was working with the Colorado Symphony and their children's programs, and I was living in Denver, so I was part of the Denver Children's Theater and the Denver Children's Museum. So doing a lot of one-man shows and storytelling in mime. And somehow they got wind of me, and I wrote this whole album of songs. You are what you eat, my friend. Yes, you are what you eat. So be sure your food is a friend, my friend, because you are what you eat. Ba-da-ba-ba. The food, it comes in many shapes, in many colors and sizes too. Okay, I can go on and on and on. So, you know, every place I went, you know, so there was always that element. But so as I started doing these shows, especially in Denver, and I was immersed in this meditation and doing yoga practice and all these things, you know, I realized, and I had a very clear vision, that this was a part of my purpose, to entertain, uplift, and inspire the children of the world. And lo and behold, someone out of the blue connected with me, and she was a puppeteer, and she said, you know, I'm wanting to create the show with this character called Nina Gadfly, who asks a lot of questions. So rather than do what she had intended, we started heartstorming rather than brainstorming. I am much more connected to the heart. And
Lovely.
in fact, as of late, they've discovered heart math. There's the Heart Math Institute and the brain within the heart. And so all these things that I always intuited are now really coming out as, you know, scientifically proven, etc. So rather than do what she had initially thought, you know, I was telling her about my passion about health and how do we share this message. And we created a show called Earth Day is Every Day, where I play Eco, an ambassador to Mother Earth, and gathering members of the E-Corps, which, you know, was this big club that enlightened and educated and entertained, et cetera, the children of the world, and taught them how to recycle and be environmentally aware and personally aware. So we created that show, which toured all over Colorado, was wonderfully successful, hundreds and hundreds of shows. So I've always, and whenever I've created my own shows, there's always messages. There's, you know, the story of the beautiful flower, which perhaps you can send a link, or however it might be. There's always, when I was 22, you know, I was a clown in high school. I was a street performer. Then in the army, the Israeli army, I was a performer. So I was the comic, etc. And when I made my way to New York, this friend invited me to a rabbi, a very, very, very famous rabbi, who apparently turns out was a storyteller. And he told a story, and literally that too, in that moment, changed my life. And I thought, oh, that's it. You know, because it was so immersive, and to, you know, create this world just with words, etc. So I started telling stories, but more than that, I started writing stories, and there's quite a few of them. And so, you know, the way, so that's another way. And in fact, I was once invited to this interesting on rooftop kind of performance where it was primarily dancers would come and share their new works, but they knew that I was very, you know, I was a physical actor. And so they invited me to come and tell a story. And amazingly enough, just prior to that, I connected with this YouTube video of a man who had been a comic book writer, and he went into the mystical path, and he was talking about it. And during that, he talks about the power of the word. And he was talking about abracadabra. Now, abracadabra is Aramaic, and it means I will create as I speak. So there is literally meaning to, it's usually said abracadabra, abracadabra. So he was saying how when you speak, these words, you know, enter the listener's ears, go into their brain, and literally affects them from the inside out. And I suddenly realized the magnitude of that. And so I intended that night to be a storytelling shaman, and to really be clear that my intention was to tell the story, but really to affect them in a positive way, which was always the intention, but it became even more focused. Well, I told my stories, and it was very successful. However, 2 weeks later, I was standing on the street corner, and I looked over, and then these two girls looked over at me, and they said, "Hey, you're that storyteller from the rooftop." And I said, "Yes, we're talking about that story right now. It's still, we're still thinking about it, and it's inspired us." I was like, yes, yes. So, I mean, just through all these, through my performance art, that's always been the intention. And so there's the yoga teacher element. I was teaching meditation. I became a Reiki master teacher, and I really appreciated teaching Reiki because it really gave a nice, simple framework to understanding the energetic element, and to open to that energy, and to relax, and to share the energy. And it was a very simplified way of teaching the spiritual path. So I started teaching that all over pretty much all over the world at different times. And it's just gone and evolved. And as of late, I started teaching a course called The Conscious Actor, where I literally combine it all.
Sounds amazing.
So it's, you know, just telling them that, you know, the conscious actor, you know, we as actors are blessed because we have to be incredibly aware of our emotions and of ourselves, But if you translate to, as Shakespeare said, all the world is a stage, well, that's absolutely correct. I mean, that's, you know, that is the case. So let it be so. So are you consciously choosing the roles that you're playing? Are you consciously choosing who you want to be and the stories and the other people in your life? So somehow, you know, we obviously go into improv and monologues, etc. But there's this constant usage of the symbology of that as a symbol to the deeper path of being conscious. So yes, yes, yes.
Wow.
But for me, everything, I mean, just this morning, as I was doing my qigong, a woman stopped me and she said, "What, are you dancing? What are you doing?" I said, "Well, this is qigong." Turns out that she's a doctor, and we spent 15 minutes, you know, just chatting, and I was, you know, able to translate it into medical terms, and she was so inspired and took my number, and well, hopefully. So I teach qigong courses and classes, and I love qigong. I mean, even it's, for me, feels more at home even than yoga, because there's this lovely fluidity to it, and it's so grounded in nature. There's a really strong sense of nature, and I love it. So yes, so teaching qigong as well, and so many ways. I'm sure I'm forgetting a few as well. So
yes, yeah. I mean, yes, and I know, like, you know, from the times I've seen people around you, what a deep inspiration you are. I remember that your first performance that I went to see you perform, and I literally, my jaw was on the floor. Such an incredible,
in Findhorn in the
yes, it was
Universal
in,
Hall.
that's right. I couldn't believe it. I mean, yeah, I'm going to put some kind of link, like you say, to one of your performances so people can see for themselves. But yeah, always very beautiful with the message coming through as well. But, you know, your delivery, like what you embody when you're performing, is incredible. It's like you really, that you delight. That's actually what you do. I have watched an entire room full of people again and again, just absolutely mesmerized by your performance, you know. So
well, that word is very it's very accurate, delight, you know, and having connected to the light body, you know, realizing, okay, my role as a performer is literally to channel that light,
and that's what you
uplift.
yeah,
In
and
fact,
that's what it's like.
In one of the early meditations, when I just arrived in Denver, Colorado, which I was going to stay there for another 8-9 years and had such a profound effect on me, I went to an 11:11 meditation. And so during this meditation, you know, it's a guided meditation. It was one of the first guided meditations I did. And I suddenly found myself completely immersed in light and kind of a form of samadhi. And I was shaking, and I literally couldn't come out. And I was in this experience for some, I don't know, a few hours, because I was just completely immersed. But afterwards, a woman came up to me, and no one knew me. She said, "Listen, I while you were in that state, I had this vision of you on a stage, and all this light is coming down through your crown chakra into your heart, and you're literally radiating light onto the audience." And I'm like, "Oh, yes, that's beautiful." So that has since then been exactly my intention. And so before almost every time before I go on stage, I will hold that vision and set that intention, you know, make me an instrument of thy light and thy love. And
which leads me to want to ask the question, because I know you're now doing sort of conscious acting teaching for students. Like, tell us about that, because that sounds so fascinating. Like, what does that involve? What does that look like?
Well, it involves, first of all, I'll teach some qigong practices and some exercising. So just to be, is that me? That's
you, my lovely pinging.
It is ringing all these wonderful opportunities. Oh, they're inviting me to gigs. So I'll get to that. So there's 2 sections of the class. The first one is a warm up, and just that alone, you know, most people, many actors, etc., they're really not connected to their bodies. And I know that for you, that is incredibly important. So to begin making them aware of, okay, so as actors, this is our instrument. And if we're not taking care of this instrument, then, you know, it won't last for as long as it can. And there's so many levels to it that we can refine and enhance and stay healthy. So there's that element. And then I have introduced the Wim Hof kind of meditation because it's short and really intense. And then I will guide them on a meditation to their inner stage. And on that stage, they will see themselves as their ultimate performer self. And then they'll come down to the audience and we'll invite some subpersonality that might be insecure or have some kind of negative belief system around performing, or, you know, all these elements. So they'll come, this is all a meditative experience. They'll envision that part of them coming onto the stage and expressing, and then they'll interact. So I'm introducing that meditative dialogue of, you know, what are the personas? What are the subpersonalities? What are the masks that we wear? Again, as actors, that's our language. We know, oh, this is my role for this play, and this is. But even in life, we have different roles, and we play you know, when I'm with my parents, or with a certain friend, or when I'm a lover. So all these different roles, we oftentimes disconnect or play completely different types of roles, and are not necessarily aware that we're doing it, and aware that we can choose which role we wish to play. So invoking that level of awareness of, okay, so what's in your subconscious, the insecurities, facing your fears, etc. And then we have this practice called checking in, where it's as simple as it can be. They need to just stand in front of the group, you know, and just be very present and introduce themselves and maybe say something about themselves or something they experienced. And I will then begin to direct them and make them aware again of, are you aware that you're kind of leaning to the right, or that while you talk, you're shaking, or that your hands are locked behind your back? And they'll, oh, no, I'm not aware. Okay, so take a deep breath and try it again. So, you know, that can last for hours. It's amazing. I love that process because, you know, it also brings out the intuitive part of me. And, you know, okay, so what's compelling that, and what's the story behind it? And we've had people, you know, there's elements of psychodrama that come up, you know, just, you know, people that open up into tears to the extent, and the intention is for it to be a very, very safe space, so that they're allowed to really go very deep. And so that becomes very apparent through my explanation and through time, that this is a safe place. Because in order for you, in Hebrew, the word for acting is literally to play. So in order for you to play, you need to feel safe. If we're not feeling safe, then, you know, the fight or flight mechanism comes up, and, you know, we start stressing and straining, and we're not really present. So that, again, is such an important element of how can we unwind and unload and take off those masks and undress those costumes and just be present, you know, return to that childlike nature. Just this clear, open presence. Okay, so what is the task at hand? I have to cry. Okay. You know, it's not crying that, you know, it's not playing that you're crying, but be able to just, you know, just to feel it. Or that you're really excited and happy that you can switch, because it becomes, it's not that it's not real, but it becomes just a shifting into a different frequency, a different energy. And it's amazing to watch them feel empowered and get it. So there's all these techniques, of course, to acting, but really for me, I'm wanting just to, because nowadays acting is really about being natural. It's just about being you in a situation and being really present. So and that is the essence of life. You know, are you consciously right now, am I present with you, aware that, you know, this is being recorded and I'm sharing, and how much energy I'm putting out, and, you know, finding the balance. And so this translates directly, and that's why I call it the conscious actor. You know, it's simply about becoming as conscious as you can to this whole inner and outer world that we each carry, that we as actors, you know, this is spirituality at its heart. Just be aware, be mindful, you know, the whole mindfulness movement. That's all it is. there is a new course that I'm starting to give called Who is Afraid of Fear? Now, as a child, I literally had every fear in the book. I mean, fear of death, of course, even though I was an actor, fear of the stage, but somehow I was able to overcome it because the passion was so strong. Fear of the dark, fear of monsters, fear that if I fell asleep, I would wake up blind or I wouldn't wake up. Fear of small closed places, fear of heights, all this stuff. So this was always, I found it hard to be alone in a house till my mid-30s. You know, there was always this sense of dread and fear, etc. So that was always something I was consciously working on with all these practices and tools that I have gathered over time. And it felt that it was time to really put something out there. So it's a course called Who's Afraid of Fear? And it uses elements of the conscious actor that, you know, one of the top fears in the world is standing in front of an audience. So, so it's Who's Afraid of Fear? Overcoming stage fright, but really, and in parentheses, or any other fear for that matter. And so we use elements of the check-in and standing up in front of people, but really to start utilizing these, first of all, to understand what fear is and that it's a very natural component until it becomes used for mostly mental elements, whether it's, you know, I'm afraid that people won't like me, or I'm afraid I won't get that job, or I'm afraid that I have a lack of money, or I'm afraid of all these things that are really not necessarily in our actual reality, but just that we're thinking about. And that's when the issue starts. So I've gathered lots of different tools and practices, be it the meditation element, especially the consciousness element, the awareness element, but there is EFT, which is amazing, emotional freedom technique, which is something that came out, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. It was having its heyday, and it was probably maybe more like 10 years ago. And in fact, that was around when I came back to Israel. I got a starring role in an opera production with the Israeli opera, where I was the storyteller. So I'm basically the narrator in very high level Hebrew, which I always had an issue with. Whole nother story. So just before one of the first opening shows, literally, I think it was maybe no more than 5 minutes before curtain, I had a complete meltdown, panic attack. I mean, I'm literally shaking and unable. I was like, oh my God. And of course, thinking the worst things. Now, luckily, I've already had 25 years of all this meditative experience, so I'm aware of what's going on. So then, okay, do EFT, Nitzan, do EFT. So I did 1.5, not even 2, 1.5 rounds of EFT, and calm. I mean, literally, my heart is just shining, and I went and had one of the ultimate shows of my life. I mean, there was not an ounce left of fear. I was able to completely shift out of it. So that literally, so afterwards I thought, yes, one day I'm going to have to teach this.
Yes.
Now I have this story.
Yes.
So
and
I'm
so
really
you are
excited about that. Yes.
amazing.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm very excited about
Wow.
that.
And so what kind of people are these? Mostly people who are wanting to act who come to you, or do you get people just who are wanting to overcome fear, or is it, you know, what kinds of people?
Well, I would love, my intention has always been to inspire. And that obviously covers the whole gamut. So when I was teaching Reiki and teaching qigong and these things, it was, you know, just general population. But then I started, somehow every time I'm meant to do something, I get invited to do it. So prior to singing, I had not sung, and suddenly I was, you know, cast in a musical. So I'm literally thrown into the deep end and told to swim. So, and this has happened with so many things. So I started being asked to teach these acting classes. And of course, with all this, you know, spiritual know-how, I said, you know what, I don't necessarily want to teach acting, but let's bring it into that direction. I'd like them to, you know, I'd like to bring awareness and etc. So that began to develop and eventually became the conscious actor. And so I'm kind of known now in those theatrical circles. So right now, you know, these are actors or these are people who would like to bring out their creativity. But my vision is to start teaching it on a broader scale. And in fact, I was meant to do that, but then Corona came along and shut everything down. So, but for me, this, wow, the last 4 months have been just, with all due respect to all those who've gotten sick and passed, this has been such an exceptional time because I was literally allowed to be a full-time monk in the heart of Tel Aviv. Literally, the streets were empty. I literally had a schedule, this monk-like schedule, and I would then go to the park. No one was around, be doing my qigong. It was completely quiet. So it was incredible,
Yes.
and that literally has jettisoned me into all these wonderful new possibilities. So for me, that was like a bridge into what's now becoming what seems a lot more grounded, and many new opportunities are going to start coming to teach and to show up and inspire, which
Yes, amazing. That is so exciting.
yes.
And you know, just in terms of like with your qigong teaching and that kind of thing, do you run online classes or do you do anything like that? I'm wondering if we could get you on to do maybe like a little slot where you did a qigong workshop for us.
Yeah,
And
I'm sure it's possible. I started, I mean, I've been acting on camera for all these years, so I know how it is to be in front of a camera. I appreciate the in-person element. However, because Corona really, you know, jettisoned Zoom into the forefront, and everyone is teaching all these things, so it's become kind of a norm. It's not yet my cup of tea. I mean, obviously, qi is such a personal thing, and you can feel it and see it, and there's so many little intricacies. You know, for me to see a student and notice that they're a little stiff or not really. So even though I teach it in a way that it's the form is less important than the intention. So if I can convey that, and you know, just you know, the fact that you're moving is already creating flow. That's really what qigong is about. So no matter how or what you do, in fact, that's what I was telling the doctor this morning. You know, I was saying you're already practicing qigong by the fact that you're walking. You know, walking is one of the ultimate qigong practices because you're, you know, swaying your hands from side to side and moving your hips and moving. So, but the short answer to that is yes. Of course, you know, I could never say no to you, B. But but I definitely prefer doing it in person. But
yeah,
I'm open. Yeah,
yeah,
I
great.
actually did I shot a few videos of me doing it during the Corona time. And I have one woman writing me every so often saying she's still doing it 3 months later and using that, you know, every day.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
you know, so I'm back to that
yeah.
initial TV series of me inspired to be like Michael Landon, being that angel to inspire people and kind of shift how they perceive that. That's still, so if that's, you know, if this is the medium, I'll do it. You know,
Yes.
there's no longer any limitation.
Yeah.
No limitations.
Beautiful. Wow. Well, I think, you know, for anybody listening to this, I'm sure they've received a huge, huge amount from all that you've shared. And perhaps I'll include some links with this of different elements of what
Some
you do so they
stories.
can see.
Would love it.
And maybe we could get you back to do a qigong class sometime. That would
I
be
want to
wonderful.
come to England. In fact, I will come to England, and you and I are going to be teaching. And
Yeah.
there's a lot coming forth.
Yeah.
This, you know,
Yeah.
I envision, and as you know me, I love to envision, and oftentimes it's true.
It usually.
Those, yeah, I have to wait patiently for them to come true because
Yeah.
usually when I suggest something, they'll say, "What, are you crazy? What are you talking about?" And lo and behold, you know, at some point it's like, "Yes, it's happening." So, but I absolutely envision. In fact, I just connected with someone in Glastonbury who would like to bring me out there and have these kind of retreats, etc. I
Great,
so love
yeah.
Glastonbury. Just it's such, that's where I connected to Gwaine and the whole Holy Grail myth, and that experience of the first time going up the Tor and just stopping at the beginning of the trail and then envisioning this monk saying, "Hey, who are you?" And he's like, "Oh, okay, who are you?" So I was trying to, telepathy-wise communicate, and he kept shushing me up. And then when I reached the top, there's a plaque there that talks about that there had been there was a monastery there for silent monks. So
Amazing.
so all those types of mystical experiences that everyone can have access to, but I have so profoundly, been working this beautiful bio machine that just enables me to tune in, and intuition and psychic abilities and all these things. It's just, we all have it. The question is, do we develop it? Do we listen?
Yes.
Are we relaxed enough to
Yes.
hear and
Yes.
be conscious?
Yes.
So
Yeah. Yes. Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing what you
yes, my
have. And it's been
pleasure.
an absolute joy and delight to listen to you. And yes, we
Always a
shall
pleasure.
see you again very soon.
That'd be
And
wonderful.
yeah, and thank you so much. So much love to you, beloved. Mwah.
Love, love,
Love,
love, love.
love. Bye.
Bye.